Before we get started reading, I'm going to give you a little scenario to consider. Pretty much everywhere, like people gather together, people share life together, you're doing things together, like we are right now. Pretty much anywhere where people share life together, there are needs that pop up, and they're not really assigned to any particular person, but just needs happen, like things happen, like needs need to be met. I said nobody's assigned to them, but these needs pop up and they're sitting there waiting for somebody to step up to the plate and do them. I said, like, for instance, obviously we gather here as church family. We're not, well, some are, most of us not biologically family, but in Christ we're closer than, any family could ever be. But we come together as church family and we look around here and we see what goes on. And it's like, just little things, even just like little needs, like, we're getting food ready next week, like chairs need to be set up, like, who's cleaning up after we're done, like who's checking on the person that's been struggling, like, maybe somebody needs a ride, maybe somebody, isn't feeling well and they need something dropped off, like who's doing the thing that like nobody's actually like signed up for, like, who's stepping up to do that. Somebody's got to do it. And that could be a lot of things. You think of that in your household, you think about that, work, anywhere else you gather, but it happens here at church. But then you think of ourselves, like, we're in those situations like, some things need to be done. And you think about it yourself, like, what do we do when we see these kind of things pop up? Maybe it's like, something needs to be done. And like, there's part of us is just like, well, I hope somebody steps up to the plate and does it. I hope the answer is somebody else. It's like, maybe we don't have bad intentions in thinking that way. And, maybe we sit back and it's like, I feel like I'm just too tired or too busy or whatever else. And so you look around the room and you wait to see who moves first. But the fact of the matter is, like, in different times and in different ways, we're all tired, we're all busy, but we all have the opportunity, to, have our part in it. Like I said, things still need to get done, and we have the opportunity to step up to the plate. And what we're going to talk about this morning is to serve, like serving each other. That can happen in your household. That can happen to even some random person you meet where there's just an opportunity to serve. That definitely can happen and is needed within the church family. And I think that there's a great example. Like, we've been talking week after week about the example that Jesus leaves us, what we can learn from him, how we could live like him. Well, there's an incredible example in Scripture that we're going to be looking at this morning of, when Jesus serves other people. And when we talk about serving other people, we'll talk about serving other people even when it was a really rough time to step up to the plate and serve other people. As we get into this passage, so we're going to be in John 13, but I want to make sure we understand a little bit of the context of it before we read it. When we read John 13 right now, understand, because this is the last night before Jesus goes to the cross. This is the last night before he dies on the cross. The cross is just hours away. They're in this room. The disciples are gathered with Jesus. There is a job that needs to be done in this room on the last night before he dies. And it's a really, low, humble job that nobody wants to do. Nobody steps up to the plate to do it. And the one person that should have had every right in the world to sit back and be served himself gets up and handles it himself. Like, Jesus steps up and deals with it. So before we're done this morning, like, we're going to see that, like, when we see what Jesus did, that Jesus didn't do what he did just as a nice gesture. He's going to explain it very clearly that he does what he does because he did it as an example. And he wants his followers to learn from his example. So now we're going to break this down kind of piece by piece. I said John 13. Let's just start by reading verse 1. John 13, verse 1 says, "Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come, that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end." Before anything happens in this room, like, John's not explaining what happens yet, but before anything happens in this room, the disciple John, as he's writing this, he wants us to understand what Jesus knew in that moment. There's going to be more that he's going to explain, but he wants us to understand what Jesus knew. Jesus knew at this point that his hour had come. If you go back and you read all of the Gospel of John up to this, there's numerous times where Jesus is interacting with his disciples. He says, the hour is not yet. The hour has not come yet. It's not my time yet. John is informing us in 13 verse 1 that Jesus knew full well that the hour had come. He knows that the cross is right in front of him. He knows that his betrayal, the person betraying him, is already in motion. He knows these things. And knowing all of that, John says that Jesus loved them to the end. And keep reading. Verses 2 through 5. It said, and supper being ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God, rose from supper, and laid aside his garments, took a towel and girded himself. After that, he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. Again, you see this, the ordering of how John does this passage. Before he ever tells you what Jesus did, again, he's helping us explain even more just what Jesus knew in this moment. It said Jesus knew his hour was at hand. Jesus knew that the Father had given all things into his hands, that he had all authority, all power. He had everything. He knew exactly where he came from. He knew exactly where he was going. Jesus knew who he was, and he knew what he was about. John's making that crystal clear. And it's in that moment, Jesus knows what's coming. He knows who he is. It's in that moment that he gets up from the table. It says he takes off his outer clothes. He ties a towel around his waist like a household servant, and he gets to work. And just to get some background, so we can really kind of understand the weight of this. I think you can understand the weight of this enough, even from who would want to do this job. But in that culture, again, different culture than we are now. Most of us, we have our shoes on. We took a shower at some point. And we got in our car. We drove here. We got out. We walked in here. But in those days, in that culture, in that time, in those places, they walked everywhere wearing sandals on dirty, dusty roads all day long. By dinner time, these people's feet were likely pretty messed up. They're probably in bad. If culturally, we got to have water by the door so you can wash your feet off, that should tell us that it's probably necessary. But basic hospitality at that time in that culture was that water was provided for you. Basic hospitality is, here's some water, wash your own feet. That's the basic hospitality. When guests arrived, that's what was provided for them. In some homes that there were servants in the homes, they would up the hospitality even more, and the homeowner wouldn't do it, but they would make their lowest servant wash the guests' feet. But it got to a point even in that culture, because there's writings even, later on in time, not in the Bible, but if you look at some other Jewish writings, the culture changed a little bit and got to the point where they said, this job is so low that we can't even make Hebrew servants. They would make foreign servants or people, they would make them do it. But people of that culture, they said the job was too degrading and too low that they would not even make them do this job. But in this scenario, Jesus and his disciples, they're walking into a borrowed room. There's no servants in this borrowed room that they're coming into. There's nobody to take care of this job. There's still water. There's still a basin of water. There's a towel still sitting there for them to do this. But there's no servant to do it. And 12 grown men, all of the disciples, all grown men of their own right, they walked right past the water and the basin and the towel. Nobody washed their feet. Every single one of them probably saw the need to do this. But they didn't even want to clean their own feet off. And you want to know what makes it even worse is that this is the same night, just prior to this, I think it's in the Gospel of Luke, that he tells us that the disciples are arguing amongst each other of who's the greatest among themselves. Like, who deserves to sit at the right hand of Jesus in heaven? They're having that argument. So they got done just arguing who's the greatest amongst them. And then they walked into this room all together with their dirty feet getting ready for dinner. Nobody washes themselves up, and nobody even thinks of, helping out the ones around them. But in that situation where nobody took care of business, Jesus gets up. And I think about this. I think one reason maybe that, serving is hard for us at times. Again, we all have different mentalities of things, but I think I've seen it before, is that, serving in some way, especially serving in lowly ways in certain jobs, that I think some people are afraid that, you serve in low and humble ways and it says something about you, that if you're always the one to clean up, well, does that mean you matter less than what other people do? If you just take an invisible job that nobody sees, well, will anybody even notice me and the things that I do or whatnot? I think sometimes we tie our worth to some sort of position, I've got to, I would like to serve, but I want to serve in this way. I want to do this thing. I want to do this thing that's going to be noticed. I want to, or whatever else. It's we tie our worth to people seeing something or having some sort of position. And so when you stoop down low to do something humble, maybe you feel like you're losing something. I'm not doing that thing that somebody else is doing. But look at Jesus. John told us that Jesus in this moment knew that his Father had given him all power, all authority. He had given him everything. If you know who Jesus is, this is the King of Kings. This is the Lord of Lords. He is the one that this whole world was made by. It's this is him. He got up from a table to go wash some human feet. Who do we think we are to think that, we should have some, position or recognition that Jesus didn't even seek? So the Father had given everything into his hands. He knew where he came from. He knew where he was going. He knew the cross was literally hours in front of him. But for Jesus, like I said, his identity was completely settled. He knew who he was. Taking the towel and doing a humble thing didn't change who he was. Jesus didn't serve in this moment because he had forgotten who he was. The lowly, humble place doesn't take anything away from him. The Father had already given him everything. He knew who he was. But the same thing is true for us. The more settled we are in I'm good at who I am. God made me. God can use me. All glory to him. The more settled we are in those things, the freer we become to kneel down and help when it's necessary. If we're worried about people just seeing us and getting some sort of recognition, well, that's not even a God-glorifying way to do anything, because that becomes about me and not about him at that point. But you see in this passage, again, we kind of see the setup and we see what Jesus is doing, and he's going around the table here. But he eventually gets to Peter. He's washing people's feet. He gets to Peter. Let's look at verses 6 through 8. So Jesus washing feet, verse 6, it says, "Then he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, 'Lord, are you washing my feet?' Jesus answered and said to him, 'What I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this.' Peter said to him, 'You shall never wash my feet.' Jesus answered him, 'If I do not wash you, you have no part with me.'" On the surface, when you see this, okay, I don't know how many people's feet Jesus has washed up to this point, but he's made it around the table and he gets to Peter. I don't know how everybody else responded. I don't know if everybody else was "Oh, great. Yeah, get my feet washed." But they get to Peter, and Peter on the surface sounds humble, and I think there may be some element of there. I think Peter looked at it and kind of his heart, I think, in this is "Lord, you're too important for this." Like, I could never let you wash my feet. But then you see how seriously Jesus takes this, and you see how he responds to him. And Jesus isn't like, oh, Peter, like, I appreciate, the thought. I appreciate the gesture. Jesus looks at him and says, if I don't wash you, you have no part with me. I think that's about as strong as it gets. And so why does Jesus make this such a big deal? Again, I think if you kind of like drill down into the heart of like what Jesus is trying to teach him here, I think about like times in our life, like I'm sure you've gone through some things, and I could think of situations with different people where a lot of times like, we need to be on the serving side of things, but sometimes it's also time for us to be on the receiving side of the time, like receiving some help. But I think a lot of times, I think maybe it comes from a prideful place, like we don't like to accept help. Like, I don't want to be in a place where like we serve to the point where people just, expect help, and that's like all they get, and they don't ever like, start moving on their own. That's growth. We got to get past that. But there are times in our life where we should be all times where we're looking to serve, but there are also times where we need to be served. And in a body, in a family like this, we take those opportunities. But think about those times, like sometimes where it's hard for us to accept help. Maybe it's simple things like somebody offers to pay for a meal, and like, no, I got it. Or somebody offers to help you move or bring dinner when you're sick, or cover something you can't cover. And there's part of us that's just like I can handle it. I'm good. Like I don't need that. I think sometimes, like from a pride perspective, it's easier to be the one helping than being the one that is getting helped. I think maybe like I feel strong when I'm helping, but needing help, I feel weak. I think that's what's happening with Peter here. Like, he can't stand the thought of Jesus cleaning up after him. Like, he doesn't want Jesus to have to clean up after him. But what Jesus is telling him is like, if you can't receive my help, you can't be mine. Like, if you can't receive from me, then you can't receive everything that I'm offering you. Being Christ, like being his, has to start with allowing him to wash us clean of things that we can't ever wash clean ourselves. Like if you're at a place where it's like, I'm good, I don't need help, you'll never in a place where you're ready to accept what Christ is offering you. Again, that's where this story and this moment that Jesus is spending with us, this is where the story, it opens up to something much bigger than just dirty feet. Because the foot washing here, it actually happened, which is crazy. It's crazy to think that the Lord of the universe, wrapped a towel around his waist, got down on the ground and cleaned up some dirty feet. Like, that's crazy to think of. But he's teaching a lesson that is so much bigger than what is just happening in this moment. Again, Jesus is hours away from the cross. He's going to that cross because he's going to do for all of us what he was doing kind of visually for these men at this table. He's cleansing people that could never get themselves clean. That's what the cross is all about. That's why he tells Peter, he's like, you don't understand it completely now, but you will later. And Peter does get it. After the cross, after the resurrection, Peter would look back at this moment and he gets what's going on. Jesus had already spelled it out in Mark chapter 10. It says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Like, serving others was Christ's heart. He was showing it really practically to these men right now, but that's what he was all about from the jump. From the get-go, it's just like he was here to serve, not be served. But in this moment, as Peter's experienced this, as Jesus is like kneeled down before him, which is a crazy thing to be. You're a person sitting there and Jesus is kneeled down before you trying to wash your feet. I can't imagine being on the receiving side of that either. But Peter, again, not understanding it completely at this moment, Peter kind of does what Peter does, and he jumps to the far extreme in this scenario. Look at verse 9. So again, Jesus in verse 8 says, if I do not wash you, you have no part in me. But in verse 9 it says, Lord, then don't stop at my feet, really. Wash my hands and my head too. Jesus tells him in verse 10, he who is bathed only needs his feet washed. He is already clean. But then John drops a really important note at the end of verse 10 and into verse 11. He says, and you are clean. Like if I do this for you, you are clean. He says, but not all of you. He says, not all of you are. And he says this because Jesus knew who in that room was about to betray him. And I want you to really stop and think about that for a second. Judas, the betrayer of Jesus Christ. Judas was in that room too. Judas had dirty feet too. Judas was sitting around that table as well. Jesus washed Judas's feet also. Think about that. I mean, that's just crazy to think about. Jesus is hours away from death. He knows exactly who betrayed him. Jesus still knelt down in front of the man who was about to sell him out for a little bit of money, took his feet in his hands and washed them clean, knowing full well everything that was about to go down. Man, like if we're trying to get the heart of Christ, if we're trying to be more like Jesus, like whatever picture we have in our head of serving other people, it has to make room for a situation like that. Like Jesus didn't come to just serve grateful people or deserving people or the ones that would pay it back. He served the one who would betray him before the sun came up the next morning. Jesus washed Judas's feet. Like that is crazy. I mean, a lot of these other guys loved him, lived their lives for him, died for him. Jesus washed Judas's feet too. Like how hard is it for us sometimes to do simple things to even make bridges for people we have problems with? Jesus got down on the ground in front of his betrayer and washed his feet. Like, that's just a tough one to think about. Like, what would that change in us if we just started serving for the glory of God and stopped worrying about, what else people are doing on the other side of it, There's wisdom and stuff that says comes with service and how we minister to people and stuff. But sometimes we don't get started or we won't engage with certain people because we have some sort of preconceived notion. Or Jesus tore it all down by doing something crazy like that. But again, you see the order of how everything that John is putting in front of us. Before Jesus ever tells anyone to wash feet or to serve other people, Jesus did it first. Like before he calls us to serve, he shows what service looks like to an extreme that we would probably fail to ever even get into a situation like that, or we'd even comprehend like that. And for all of us sitting here, the reality is you have been served by Christ. Maybe not in the literal washing of your feet, but in a far greater way. The serving that he has done for you is him loving you all the way to the cross. Him eating, dying, going through all of those things for you. That's what he did. Like he washed you clean with his own blood. That's what some of these songs we sung this morning were talking about. I think in John's letter later in the New Testament, 1 John, he put it in one simple sentence. It's like we love now. We have the ability to love him and love others because he loved us first. Like we serve because he served us first. Like that's where real serving comes from. If we were to walk out of here today just trying to be better servants on our own, like I'm just going to try to do a little bit more, that's going to get played out pretty quick. 2 weeks down the road, it's like, I forgot I said that, or I got busy. It's just like, that'll last a little while. Like what we're looking at Jesus to learn today is to learn a heart that's really taken in what Jesus has done for it. Like, I want all of our hearts to understand the serving that Jesus has done for us. Like when we understand the love that he has for us, we understand how he served us, when we understand how he died for us, and those aren't just, bullet points on some storybook lesson or whatever, when it's real for us, our heart starts changing. I think when you really understand those things, when it's like the core element of your life, you want to pass that along to others. Like when you understand, appreciate to that level, like what he's done for you, it's like, man, I want you to know about that. Like, I'm not just holding on to some like, oh, I just got some like, random piece of information. This isn't like, fortune cookie one-liner where it just doesn't mean anything. Like, Jesus died for you. He served you. He exemplified it to these people, but he washed you clean with his blood. Like, if you have any level of appreciation for that, why in the world would that cause you to do nothing? Like, why would you not want to tell people about that? Like, when you really understand it, it has to start flowing out of you. Like, and that's in different ways, in different places, and like, but it's just like, in some ways it starts. And then it grows, and hopefully throughout your life it grows. But this lesson, that we're working on learning today, again, it's the same lesson that Jesus explains to his disciples in this moment. Read the following verses. Read 12 down to 15. So after he said that about Judas, it says in verse 12, so when he had washed their feet, he had taken his garments, he sat down again. He said to them, do you know what I have done for you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example, that you should do as I have done for you. Jesus asked them a question, like, do you know why I just did what I did? like, you just experienced this. Do you know what I have done for you? And I love that Jesus asks it that way. Like, he doesn't, like this, scenario, this event that happened with the disciples, like, he doesn't want this just to be some like nice memory that they look back at and reflect on someday. He wants them to understand it. He wants them to get the lesson that changes the life after the lesson. He walks them through the logic. And again, we've been talking about, apprenticing under Jesus, like learning under Jesus, like this part of the study that we've been going through. And you follow the logic of the apprentice here. He says, you call me teacher and Lord. He's like, that's right. Like, that's exactly who I am. I am teacher. I am Lord. And if you follow that thought process with me, then if I, as your teacher, do this, then the students should do it too. Like, that's what he's explaining to them. It's like, if the Lord takes the low place, then the people following him don't get to say that the low place is beneath them. Jesus got down. And he nails it down. I think in verse 16, he says, most assuredly I say to you that the servant is not greater than the master, nor is he who sent greater than he who is sent him. Jesus looked right at them and said, I have given you an example that you should do as I have done. That's where our title comes from this morning. Do as I have done. But notice, like, it's not just a suggestion. Like, Jesus is giving out assignments here. It's not just some suggestion. Like, this would be a really nice idea if you thought about, when you have time, like penciling in some doing stuff for other people. No. Jesus is like, do as I have done. Like, he says, I didn't come to this earth to be served. I came to this earth to serve people. That's how he defined himself. But what does this actually look like for us? Again, we're not just talking about dirty and dusty feet in our day and age, and I'm glad. I'm glad about that. But instead, serving each other looks like looking for the needs that are right in front of you. Look for what people are going through. Again, the simple things, and I've seen people stepping up some of these things, after we gather, like, dishes need to be washed, like things like that. Like, you're at work and you see a coworker and they truly need help with something. And it's like, you don't want to take everybody's work out, but there's time where you can step up and you can help. Like, as in a way of serving somebody and helping them. It could be the person in this church that just needs somebody to help them or needs somebody to talk to. Be that person. Maybe there's tasks at home, like around just, normal home life. And, maybe they've kind of been delegated to different people around the house. But sometimes it's like, yeah, I can do that. I can take the opportunity to serve and to do some other things that maybe aren't typically mine, but I can bless other people by doing them. Just like that night in this room, I think a lot of times we walk into situations where there's a water basin at the door. Like there's an opportunity there. It just shows up in 100 different ways every week. Like it could be all different types of things. But the needs have been there and they will always be there. But are we going to continue being the person that just walks past them and waiting to see if somebody else steps up to the plate? Or are we going to start being a person that takes the first step? Who is the first person to step up? Who is the one to jump up? Hopefully there's a need. It's like, oh, too many people got here. One of us can take, I said, as we go back to like the earlier example, I said like, things needing to be done like within, church life. I think this really matters for the health of church family life. Like church isn't supposed to just have spectators and customers. Like church isn't about spectating and being a customer of it. Jesus has done everything for us. Now we come together to serve him and to serve each other. Like that's what we come for. This isn't just a come and take deal. It's a come and be a part of. It's be part of the family. It's love your God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor too. Amen. Again, there's opportunity to do that now, here, and there will probably be more so. As God continues to help us grow into the future, there will be more opportunities to serve. But when we look at this heart of service, like our heart of serving, like in serving should be purely others focused. Like I'm serving for the glory of God and for the benefit of others. But the cool thing when you read this is that doesn't mean that there's not something in it for us too. Look at verse 17. Verse 17 says, if you know these things, again, Jesus is like, have you learned the example? Have you learned the lesson that I'm sharing with you? He says, if you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. Jesus says, blessed are you if you do them. Jesus is saying that the blessing in all of this, the real joy of this way of life is on the other side of actually doing it. And if you've ever, maybe if you've been that person that's like actually serve people, again, selflessly, sacrificially, taking the time out of whatever else you could have been doing to serve other people. But you know that in doing that, you've found the joy in that. You've seen what God does. You've received that blessing. That's like, for my wife and I, we have opportunities all throughout the years to do various different things. And it's like, there's a lot of things in life we haven't done, but we don't feel like we're missing out on so much because the most satisfaction we've ever found in life is from serving the Lord and serving other people. Like I can't find that anywhere else. And I think a lot of people haven't experienced that. And so they've been comfortable like sitting on the sidelines, but you'll never find the joy in the heart and the lesson that Jesus is teaching here. You'll never find that on the sidelines. I think what Jesus is teaching us is that it turns out that the lowly, humble place of service is where the real life and blessing is at. And many people fail to experience that. Serving is not always easy, but it is fulfilling in a way that nothing else really is. And so as we close out, let me just bring this full circle. Lots of needs in all of our life, church, home, work, everywhere else. Lots of needs pop up all the time around us. We probably can't take care of every last one of them on our own. That's why we need more people thinking this way in our lives and around us. But maybe if we're taking Jesus' lesson to heart, maybe now when a need pops up, instead of wondering, I wonder who's going to do it, maybe now we'll start thinking that, maybe it's supposed to be me. Maybe I'm supposed to be the one to take care of this. Maybe we'll start standing up and taking care of business. Again, and this isn't a pride thing, Like it's not some task or some checklist that you need to check off because like God expects this of me. It's simply the fact that our Lord, whom we're apprenticing under, basically says, I have served you, and you should be doing likewise for others. Like if you understand my heart, if you understand like why I did what I did, the lesson here is the Lord has served us. If you sit here today saved, if you have accepted the grace of God and know the joy of the Lord, like we talked about this morning, if you have that, then the Lord has served you in a way that nobody else in your life ever has. And what he says to his apprentices, when he says his disciples, is do as I have done. And he's not asking you to get on a cross. Like that would be crazy. Some of his followers that were in that room that night got on crosses, died on crosses. We don't have to do that. We could just, like, there's opportunities to serve each other. He says, like, I've done everything for you. Now just do as I have done. Take the heart and desire to take that heart and serve other people. Like I said, 2,000 years ago, Jesus got up from a table, laid aside his garments, knelt down. He washed some men's feet, and then the next day, he went and died on a cross. He looked at the people that were learning from him. He said, I've given you an example. I hope that you want to know what the end of this passage meant that says, blessed are you if you do it. There's blessing found in a life live for the Lord. We get so caught up about me and mine and what I want to do and all of these things that sometimes we won't give some of that up. Maybe God calls you to give all of that up and go a completely different direction. But is he important enough to listen to take those steps? Start small. But start small and grow and listen to him and let him take you everywhere he wants you to take you. Like, man, I think even for our young people and stuff, like so much more we're like worried about like, career and doing all this stuff. Great, like do those things. But what does it look like for you to serve the Lord first and foremost and then add those things to the equation? Don't let that be the start of the equation. Make him the center of everything and then build on that. We don't talk to the young people about that anymore. So, like, at least here, maybe like, some of us older ones, we can make the changes that we can now, but for the generation that's coming up behind them, let's show them the example that we've learned from Christ and encourage them in the same thing. So hopefully the next generation that comes up behind us does better than we ever did. That's the hope.